Managing people doesn't have to be scary. Whether you struggle with hiring or firing employees, developing individuals or teams, or even managing workplace relationships, I have some answers that can help you establish your approach. I'm Phil Badley, a leadership coach who helps business owners to lead better and more productive lives. I've developed some great content aimed at small businesses that want to focus on improving their performance. Now, the context is set in the therapy sector, although the principles I'm sharing are the same regardless of the business that you're running. I hope they can help you with a challenge that you're facing. So why not take a look and see how my tips can help you to improve your approach to managing people. So let's just think about an appraisal process in your clinic. Let's imagine that either you haven't got one or you want to think about its true purpose and is it still serving you well. So just a set of questions for you to scribble down and to ponder, or maybe to rewind and rethink about. So what is the purpose of the process in your clinic? Is it just a process, or actually does it have a performance end? Why are you introducing it, or why would you want to change it? What's your own business case for doing that? You're going to spend time and resource, and you're going to tie up time and resource. It has to generate value for money for your business and have a purpose. How does it fit into your current business environment? Is it completely alien to sit down and talk about performance, or is it something that actually works and everybody feels comfortable about? How do you want it to work? What kind of frequency? Who will appraise who? Now, in some clinics it's a bit obvious because there's actually only maybe a handful or less employees, in which case if you're the business owner you're probably going to need to appraise everybody. If you're in a bigger clinic where you've got people reporting into you, perhaps clinical directors and business managers, then you're going to be appraising them, and you're going to want them to appraise people who report into them. So you then have to start thinking about being clear about the process, the remit, the consistency. All of that is really important to a successful process. And how are you going to develop the approach to fit your clinic? When's a good time to introduce it or to review it? How will you communicate the changes and share the process with your team so that you're comfortable with it and they understand it and they're comfortable with it too? Think about the type of questions that people might ask you about the process. What will your answers be? How will you prepare? How will you know? When you think about the changes you want to make, or the new process you want to put in place, how will you know whether it's working? How will you measure the success of that process? And perhaps importantly, think about the help you might need to develop that process, to review that process, to develop your own comfort and capability, and where you might get that help and resource from. So let's move on to think about hints and tips. And I've called this section the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm going to start with the ugly. So what does ugly look like in my world? Well, it's not time to settle old scores in appraisals. It's not time to dig up the past. It's not time to talk about other colleagues behind their back, or allow your colleague to talk about other colleagues behind their back. It's not time to apportion blame. It's not time to lose your temper. I once had a situation where I couldn't see eye to eye with my boss about my performance, and he lost his temper. That's just about the worst thing you could possibly do in an appraisal process. If you think you might need some help with your own behaviour management with some of your less favourite employees, then think hard about it before you start out. Let's just think about bad. To me, bad appraisals just focus purely on process. Now, I know some of you will have got a background in the NHS, perhaps. Some of you may have worked in other industries, particularly if you're not clinically qualified. Perhaps you're supporting office and clerical and customer-related processes. And lots of people seem to like laptops these days. So they sit behind their laptop with their pre-formed forms and ask you questions and then type the answers in. So actually we're not getting any rapport. I don't feel that you're listening to me. You're not really engaging with me. You're just trying to rush through a process to tick a box. It's also poor if you're not prepared. You haven't given yourself time to prepare and you're not connecting within that process on the one-to-one. It's also really bad if you are avoiding the truth. So smoothing things over and covering things up actually also isn't going to help in the long run. How you manage and resolve those, really, really important. Allowing others to point the finger. It wasn't my fault. It was Mary's fault. Not helpful. Well, where's the accountability? Where's the responsibility sitting? What's my part in that? What's your part in that? Another favourite for me on the bad list is to cancel, defer or cut short the meetings. I'm just too busy. I'm really sorry. Something's happened. Even worse for me in today's environment is allowing yourself to get distracted by watches, phones, people knocking at the door. Put do not disturb on. Switch everything off. Give people your undivided attention. Failing to record is also another common problem, I think, in my bad list. So we don't record the actions, we don't record the goals, we don't record the agreements, the achievements, the areas for improvement. And then when we get back together again a few weeks or months down the line, we can't remember who said what, and then it dissolves into a farce. So anything on the ugly and the bad list can leave employees feeling demotivated, uncared for, humiliated, fearful, and in some cases incompetent. Now that's not the place you want to be, is it? So what does good look like? Well, good for me means that we're making performance, learning and improvement part of everyday life in the clinic. Just like putting together a recovery plan for a client. It allows people time to reflect and to prepare, and to be prepared yourself in terms of the relationships that you want to foster. It's always focused on the person, the individual, the dialogue, and your spirit and use of inquiry, not presuming. It's about you being clear about your priorities, your standards, and the measures. It is about allowing the development of mutual goals and target setting, but it's important that you retain the lead in terms of providing the clarity and the decisions ultimately in terms of the direction, the target and the performance. It's also about being open to your own learning and understanding of yourself and others. It's about allowing time and focusing on the moment, and as I've already said in the bad, not allowing distractions. Providing support, keeping promises. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Nothing worse than actually making empty promises, because again it undermines the whole process and your relationship. When you are in a one-to-one, make sure you end in a good place. It's okay actually to have strong conversations and to share different points of view, as long as it's done in a respectful way. In a good process, you'll be keeping notes. Ideally, they'll be shared and agreed notes, but that doesn't always have to be the case. The important thing is that you've got notes. Stick to the schedule that you promise. Make appraisals stick. Hold everybody to account for the appraisal process and the outcomes. And make sure it's not a fad. It will take time to embed. It will take time for people to feel comfortable about it. It will probably take time for you to feel comfortable about it. The important thing is to give everybody the time to develop. At the end of the day, it is core to your business performance. Performance appraisal is not an option. So let me bring this discussion around employee appraisal into a summary and a close. Love them or hate them, you've got to grow to love them. They're a rich source of engagement and performance improvement for your clinic. They're core to your future business success. They relate very much to a client journey for me in clinical terms, right the way through from that capture and the initial assessment, right the way through recovery, and then the re-goal setting and the personal bests or the achievements and the health. So that kind of learning and improvement cycle is just what an effective performance appraisal system looks like. It's going to provide your team with direction and clarity. Done well, it's going to make them feel valued. It's going to give them access to future development. It's going to give you a sense of connection with your team to better understand their capabilities and their capacity to develop and grow. So this has been an overview of the approach to appraisal. I hope that it's helped you think about your next stages, either in development or in review.